Today's guest for the 50th episode of the Self-Care Savage podcast is Eddie Perino. Eddie's an international speaker, video producer, and the founder of Your World Within. His goal is to inspire others to live their best lives. From the motivational videos he creates on YouTube to his podcast episodes to the stages he speaks on all over the world, Eddie offers a blueprint to those looking for an edge as they navigate their day-to-day lives. With over 200 million total streams, his use of powerful spoken word and beautiful imagery is a reminder to many that they are always one decision away from a totally different life.
So I'm so appreciative, Eddie, of you being here. I have found you, and in fact, I found the TikTok thread, which was just a comment back and forth. But I remember when I first started getting some traction with my platform, which was completely unintentional. It wasn't something I had gone in doing. My goal for anything I was posting was for hold myself accountable and legacy. And of course, it started resonating a little bit. But I remember when people started getting attracted to it, I was like, well, I was still a little bit like, well, what's happening? But I started wanting to do some research, and I wanted to, and again, it started on TikTok. I mean, I had these other platforms, but for some reason it resonated with TikTok, which of course, it's not for some reason. It's because TikTok was the short form video back then before they even started encouraging long form. So all of my content was just very short, very, very, very quick. So I think that was part of it, and they pushed it out a little bit more. But I remember researching, and you're one of the first people that I ran across. And I was just like, oh my gosh, just the way you presented things, your cadence, your pauses, your whether it was short or long. And I was just, and I felt like I was watching a movie, so to speak. I just wanted more. I just, when you'd pause and the visuals were great. Things that I'm still so weak at. I'm a one-man shop still. So it was incredible. And that's when I started thinking, I needed to understand this a little bit more because I was making an impact. So I wanted to learn how to make an impact. And you were, again, one of the first people that I ever reached out to. And out of all those people I reached out to, Eddie, you're still one of the few that responded. And not only responded, but I just knew from your response that you cared. Just, you paid attention to what I said, or you made that effort. But I'm just going to read this. So I reached out and I said, hey, Eddie, you're an amazing storyteller, a little envious over here. Ha ha. Love listening. Keep it up. Thanks. And you responded back. Thanks, brother. And nothing to be envious about. You've built an incredible community, my friend. Love your stuff. That's right there was just like, I just was very appreciative that someone that was already, had already made an impact. It was making a huge impact, especially on YouTube. I mean, YouTube is, and that was where I think the long form carried more. But I know I'm talking a little bit. I'm just trying to set this up. A lot of it'll get cut through, but I wanted you to know that first communication and that first impact you had on me as far as that goes, and because it changed me. And I just wanted to set all this a little bit up about how you made a difference on me, which is a big part of the impact I'm making. And that's just, it's a gazillion fold. And I wanted to recognize you for that. So now I'll be quiet for a minute.
No, hey, that means the absolute world to hear. It's fun when you can connect and, inspire good people. And by the way, it's reciprocal, it's like, I've been a fan of your stuff, and I love watching your videos. And for me, you said something that, a little while ago, just, it feels like you're talking about things you're going through. It feels like you're coaching yourself. It feels very real. And to me, that's inspiring. And I watch your videos and I go, I want that, right? I want to be as real as possible and always be in the moment and just trying to, you know, just it's about giving the world what you're going through and doing it in an authentic way. And so you bring that tenfold, and yeah, it's a feedback loop. Let me tell you. So I learn a lot from you and your work as well.
Well, I thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate it. And this is one of the things I've learned. There can be any given day somebody can get on social media and they're looking for inspiration and motivation, and they're going to run across 10 of us that are trying to put that out. But they're going to be swiping and whatever, and they're just going to hit that one person, male, female, whoever, young, old, whatever it could be. They like the way they talk. They like how they're presenting it. And that's what got so intriguing for me too, as I'm fiddling with things. Sorry about that. Got so intriguing for me too was, again, we can all say things as you talk about and deliver it in a specific way that, again, it's going to resonate with somebody versus, the other 9, they're not feeling it, even though it's the same message. And I think those are huge benefits to social media. And one of the things with you, and I'm really working on that too, and maybe we'll become good friends and I can just hit you up all the time, but is this long form stuff. I have struggled with YouTube, and I'm not looking for advice now, but I'm trying to point something out too. The way your little short clips work, as well as, and you take a lot of them, of course you chop things up too, but your long form stuff, I mean, and I went back, I looked at your very first video you put out on YouTube. It was 3 minutes long, 3.5 minutes long. And because I just wanted to kind of see 9 years ago to where you are now. And you can kind of tell the evolution a little bit in how you do things, but you're so good. You've called it speech writing. And I mean, writing these long form things out and then putting all these visuals with it. And that, I think, is a gift. I don't think, because if you look around for that, you can see all these faceless content that's coming out right now, sure, especially with AI and people just taking these things and AI's writing it and scripting it, and they're doing the visual things. But it's just, once you kind of go through that, you doing that and how you do that, I think is incredible too. And I think that's what, that's got to be something that people really picked up on from you early on. Maybe?
I think so. I mean, it's funny because it's been such an adaptation game. Like, to your point, the first speech was 3 minutes, and I came from sort of a music background, definitely right, creative. I love being creative and just losing myself in that process. And so, the first year or even couple of years, it was like I saw a speech or video or whatever you want to call it, like a song, where it's like, you have one simple single message and you have sort of a slow intro and then an increasing middle and then a crescendo at the end. It was always, to your point, it was always like a personal story, something I'm going through, a lesson I learned, or maybe I got my butt kicked and here's what I learned, or I did something great and here's what I think helped me do that. And just always sharing that from like an exploratory thing. But then, winning over time is adapting, and YouTube changed drastically. I mean, when their algorithm switched to watch time as a key metric, it was like, well, you better change the way that you storytell. This is your chance to level up. And that's exactly what I did. And like, my philosophy is like, how do you win on each platform? And YouTube's long form. And so how do you entertain for 20 minutes, where, you can be very generic and get to that same message in 3 minutes. Well, now you got to kick your feet back, talk to your audience and bring them on a journey that's 17 minutes. And so it's just it's been fun because it's always been the same elements of me. And, the artist in me and the storytelling in me, but it looks a lot different. And I think that's the fun. I think it'll look a lot different, a year from now, 2 years from now as well. It's funny, like TikTok, you brought that up, and to me, like, it's funny hearing you say that, because I feel like no one does TikTok better than you. It's raw, and it's, just, it feels spontaneous and authentic and not rehearsed, and just, it feels good, like a person talking to a person. Whereas, the polished environment on YouTube is what I originally took to TikTok. And in many ways I still do. And I'm having to unlearn that, because TikTok is about being unfiltered, and it's being, sort of spontaneous. So yeah, everyone's got their thing, and you're just trying to adapt the best you can.
Yeah. And I think that, with what you're talking about with having to level up and as the platforms change, and like with YouTube, but I think that's what's incredible, because look, it's a visual thing. It's a visual game when you go long form. And also with what you're doing with with your words, you do it in a way, you're given that visuals there again, those pauses, and that visual might get turned up a little bit, or the excitement in it, or whatever, and then you're back to you kind of go a little bit further with talking. It's an art, and I think a lot of people miss that part of it, because they you hear a lot of the he can just talk, and then he's just rolling some B-roll, or whatever, getting some video from wherever. It's just not that. You're actually putting that together, how it fits with what you're doing. So it's just like getting on stage, right? I mean, if you're whatever, depending on the audience you're talking to, you've got to create whatever that atmosphere for them people, and you may change your words and do your things, and you may dress differently depending on who you speak to. Look, I've always told my kids, there's nothing wrong a lot of times with conforming to get what you want, as long as it's not hurting anybody. Sure. And part of that is again, you're not compromising yourself. If you have to put a jacket on that day, to go present something in front of, a bunch of old guys like me that are a little bit more conservative from the day, and for them to hear your message. So I think all that kind of stuff ties in, and I can get off on these tangents, but I did watch that Mulligan brothers interview that you guys put out. And I, that was, if anybody, you guys out there want to just kind of get a real 10-minute digest of Eddie, you can go to it's Mulligan Brothers on YouTube. It's an interview he did, and it talks a little bit about some things I want to lead into a little bit too. So a little bit about your personal journey. I think personal journeys are very important. I'm learning about this setup, but I have to change. Sorry, I've got this mic thing. But personal, I think that's what influences you where you're going. So you built this significant following, and it's the world with your world within is what your platform is called. And so, but I am curious again about any pivotal experiences that happened in your life that shaped you, that brought you to creating, your world within, and just brought you to this point. Any real hardcore specifics, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful question. For me, there's always been just sort of that, like, creative in me, and I'm very purpose driven, and have always been looking for that spot where it's like, I love doing what I do, and also it helps people. And so it took me a long time to realize I can have that, which sounds weird, but like, and this is, probably one of the most important messages that I like to dive into is, I it was just, I lived to do what I was told. I lived to not make mistakes. I lived to conform, to not be in trouble, to blend in. I got good grades, to go to a good college, to get a good job, to move up the corporate ladder. Nothing wrong with that if that's you. It happened to not be me. And so I just remember being like in my mid 20s, I always tell the story, like driving to work, hoping I'd get a flat tire. And it's like, how long are you going to live like this? And I realized that in the speech you mentioned, like the 3-minute one that I started with, Ode to Excellence, is about like stepping out into what feels right and trying things and trusting yourself, like to put your back against the wall. And so I did. I left. I started playing music, producing local musicians around Boston. I started creative writing. I started taking the camera out and making videos. And it was just this process of like, it felt for the first time like life had meaning. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew what I didn't. And I continually started pushing away the things that weren't me until I arrived at this spot, and it was like a year into the music thing, money was drying up, starting to get a little nervous. Friends and family are sending me resumes for old jobs again in the corporate. And I'm just like, oh God, what do you do? Right. It's like, it's very real. And I wrote that speech and like, I wanted it to feel like an Apple commercial. Like when people are dancing around and they're not selling you an iPhone by holding an iPhone, they're just dancing through the streets and they make you feel good. And you're like, I want whatever that is, Right. And I'm like, well, how do I tell this story in that way? And, just started writing these videos where a lot of them I composed the background music. I wrote the speech. I got the visuals. And it was just this new art form where I could talk about my pain points in a way that helped people. Right. And it was like I finally brought everything together in my own world where it's like I got up excited. It's like I have a lesson I'd love to bring to life through art, through media. And I think this will help people. And it did. And that was like, after finding that, it was just, hey, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know how it's going to pay me or if it's going to pay me or how long it's going to take, but I'm going all in here. And and so long story short, like the messages that I try and convey to people are little tidbits from that. It's like you have to explore. You have to try things when you don't know. Societally, there's not a lot of incentive, at least immediately, to say, hey, go find yourself, right? Or like, go see what you love doing that can help people. It's okay that it's not going to be an immediate impact. It's okay you're not going to get paid right away. Just go. And so much value is on the other side of that decision. And so it was a culmination of little things like that.
There's a lot of discipline in that too, delaying delaying the gratification part and all that. So are you pretty disciplined? Is that part?
I think so. I mean, I'm by no means perfect, but I'm in this studio almost every day for a lot of hours every day. So
I kind of picked that up, but also the interesting thing about you is so I have two sons. Okay. One is 30 and one is 28. How old are you?
36.
Okay. So they're so different, just so different on these spectrums. But the combination kind of remind me the combination of both of them. And let me tell you why, just real quick, why putting that together. Because of the discipline, I have my oldest one. He's just laser focused. He's in the corporate world and he wins. And it's because that's his game. That's what he likes to do. That's what, you drop him in a process that everybody else is doing and he will do whatever to put in the hours, whatever he needs to do because he loves it to be the best one at doing that process, And then I have this, my baby boy who's in Dallas and he's a videographer. And he's was in broadcast journalism, in high school, but he really got into the videography. And he is a videographer in hip hop in the hip hop and rap world. Oh, and cool. He manages a couple of artists and things like that. So that's his passion, and he's kind of their worlds in doing that. You just kind of reminded me a little bit of,
A
of
little
both
yin
of that.
and a little
So
yang. Yeah.
again, that's just me on that. And I love talking about my kids, so I just stole another opportunity. So,
That's
anyways,
amazing.
all right. So now we're talking about kind of childhood stuff.
Sure.
Now, again, a lot of my background is in a lot of where I'm coming from and where I've grown and is from things that occurred in my childhood, which they're not sad stories anymore. And a lot of this has been displayed through this social media that I've been doing is, look, I've been going hard on myself for 10 to 14 years, really 10 years, but started the process 14 years ago. And I was just north of 50. I'm 63 now. And so, I was living this crazy world, but I used to just be this victim running around in this world, just anything that went, all that was, it was blame, not all of that stuff, not taking responsibility and just blah, 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 poor me. And so I don't do that anymore. Through my healing and through what I've done, which is a lot of social media, putting these things out, like I said, holding myself accountable and things I'm working on and just being very transparent with them. It's just amazing the transformation I've made into now even being better at spreading my message, because I don't get emotional about it. I'm not getting angry about it. It's just, this is what happened. This is, how I did it. This is not mean how you have to do it, but take what fits, throw away the rest, kind of deal. And, but so your childhood, so your upbringing, what, any lessons, anything in there that brought you to a point? Because you've got to be able to put out some of the stuff you put out. You've got to have had some struggles. Maybe not. A lot of people can also learn by just observing or being empathetic of what they see happen to other people. But anything in your childhood or anything like that kind of has driven you to this a little bit too?
I think mostly internal, because
Okay.
I know what you mean. Like, a lot of folks in our space have a traumatic event where they take a step back and they go, okay, I'm rewiring this.
Right.
And for me, it was just so incremental. Like, I just lived a life. And by the way, very fortunate, like great parents that cared about me, had everything I needed growing up.
Nice.
Just blessed, but very in the box. Like, I needed to be in my school grades wise and very into athletics. But like, you sort of lose yourself in that. And it's like, you forget that it's okay to step outside and just be you, and you talked about sort of the victim mentality that I think we all dabble with, and it's like, you have to learn, one, that's how you're looking at the world. And two, your true empowerment is, if there's things you don't like in your life, you take that finger, you stop pointing it out at the world, you point it in at yourself, and all of a sudden you're blessed with the ability to solve things. It's like, if you don't like these people that are around you, hey, stop being around them. If you don't like, it's funny, like now, for example, the job thing, which as a 36-year-old looking back in my 20s, seems so obvious. It's like, okay, you don't like your job, leave your job.
Right.
But when you're in it, that's the world. Like, you can't just leave your job. You've worked so hard for this. Think about the uncertainty thing. No, like, you're being a victim. It's like, if you don't like it, go fix it, because you're capable of fixing it. And I think just relearning that again and again and again. I tie running into a lot of my talks about life and just observations about life. And I think part of the reason I love running is because those reminders are so transferable. It's like, there's no point at a distance run or during a distance run where it doesn't hurt. There's always going to be some adversity or something where it's like, you have to trudge through, and 10 times out of 10, you get through it. Right. But you just have to know you're the type of person who does. And I think life is similar. And so you're just learning that and sort of re-implementing. It's funny, Scott, like, I've written almost 1,000 speeches now on YouTube, and it's like so many things. Like I'll be like, this is an epiphany. Like this is life changing. This is so helpful for me. I'm going to share it. And then I'll go back 7 years and I'll be like, oh wait, like I learned this 7 years ago, just in a different context.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like the same themes. We're just not perfect. We're always, continuously adapting and taking what we know.
Yeah, I think that the running, I definitely identify with that. Mine's, of course, been mostly the hiking, and it is the long distance stuff. It is the stuff where I talk to people about, look, when you talk about, it gets uncomfortable, but it's not uncomfortable the first half. Yeah, uncomfortableness comes when your body's now stressed and you've put in a bunch of work. Now, what are you going to do? Now, what are you going to do when the voices come up? Or now, what are you going to do when it gets a little tougher? It's starting to rain or it's getting cold or whatever. And you're supposed to be doing, your 12 miles. I mean, so you're going to, it's, the weather's a little foul, so I got to go in. That's, I think, a little bit about what you're talking about. It's definitely, doing some hard stuff, pushing through things. And I also think, I try to tell people ask me all the time, well, you must, or make comments, you must meditate, or what do you do for meditation or things like that? And I tell them I do active meditation. I mean, I can, and I can zone right out on my feet or a tree that I can see in the distance, and just, I can get in a very calm state doing that. And it's very difficult to do in everyday society and all the noises and, everything that goes on with life, so that's, again, I'm such a proponent of activity, the body. And again, especially, the age I am, being 63, I am, I'm healthier than I have ever been in my life.
That's amazing.
And it's just it all ties into the mental, to the spiritual, and then, again, doing all of the work around that to tie them all together. So how do you kind of gain that when you haven't been through it? Because I feel like you feel it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly do. And I think the thing I would suggest, so Viktor Frankl put out this metaphor where he said suffering is like a gas, right? And it fills any room. And so when I look at, for example, someone that goes through something super traumatic, and I certainly have friends and even family members in some respects that have been through things that I can't even fathom. And so you point to that and you go, my God, right? The strength to overcome that. In your own world, your suffering doesn't feel less, right? So like when I take, for example, it took 7 years of doing this before I got that exponential growth and that sort of comfortability and, financial cushion. And that means almost every day for 7 years, I was stressed. That means I would work on things that I thought were going to change the world. I'd release them and there'd be crickets and I would just be devastated. I internally felt not good enough, comparing myself to others, felt like a loser, all these things. Like there are battles we're all fighting. Right. And so, to take some of that pain and repurpose it, I think is where the magic is. Relationships, right? People that I thought were going to be in my life forever. The wheels fell off the wagon and all of a sudden they're gone. And you're left to pick up the pieces. That's a suffering that everyone deals with and a lot of people can relate to. And so I think it's just being cognizant of these things we deal with. And instead of just letting them, dissipate, it's like, no, capture them for a second. Sit with them. And not only that, find value in them, because in a weird way, all of that chaos and all of those quote unquote bad things have something beautiful underneath them. And so what I'm trying to do is just take them when they're in my life and position them in a way that says, hey, I'm sure, it doesn't feel good that your relationship fell apart, but here's what it means. And here's how you could potentially be better for it. and it's little things like that I think are truly impactful. And that's just what I started. It's funny when you start to look for those things, it's impossible not to see them. And so it's just like those little lessons hidden in plain sight is what I love to dive into.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, just again, the way you deliver things, even like this, it's just, it's crazy. I can't be the only one out there that's like, oh my God, there's Eddie. Listen,
Well,
again,
thanks, brother.
I think that's such a big part of it. Anyway, so okay. So also, I know you did talk about, again, I think you just mentioned it about, you see friends, family have been through a lot of things, and you kind of pick up on those things. And so obviously that is a big part of your mindset. And that's, that is empathy. That is, whether people mistake empathy, I think, as you have to have gone through that to understand it. And then that's not true. You can observe something, and it definitely, if you have empathy, you're feeling a way that it's like, dang, you want to try to support them or do whatever because, you feel it, I don't know. Yeah. We're not going to get into a bunch of those other terms, but do you feel that? I mean, do you feel as though you have that kind of a connection with people?
I do. And I think, we were talking about, the upbringing. I think that's one of the things, that I'm so grateful for my parents for, really going above and beyond to make sure that was something that we all had. Right. And so I'm not sure how empathy is technically defined, but like in my mind, it's the ability to see from someone else's point of view and ask yourself, well, how would that make them feel?
Yeah,
And
very well put.
it's critical for the stuff that I write, because it's there will be some of it starts out selfish, right? It's like a therapy session for me. It's like here's a lesson, here's the story and what I learned, but I always end with, and by the way, here's how this could potentially make your life better. And I think that bow on things is where a lot of the value is, and
Absolutely.
so the ability to empathize is it's huge.
Yeah, because the content that we're, I think that we're trying to make, and lots of others are too, is making it for people. You can, right. I mean, we can talk about so much about ourselves and exactly what's going on, but and I think that's of interest to people at times. But they're not tuning in exactly just to understand what's happening with you. You're connecting with them, right? All these things are what we're talking about is tying together, and that, I think that is the beautiful thing about it, and especially tightening that up toward the end of whatever we're doing and putting a bow on it, like you said, to help them, so that it does give them that sense that, look, it's to have somebody even through the screen. I mean, they're feeling that we feel it. That's the I think these are all things that I'm still putting together. You have to understand, you're a young man, you're just like my kids. You're just like, and you have, just like I feel like my kids are way more evolved than I ever was. And you are too. At my age, 36, I was just a mess. And, but my point is you have so much time with this. And this is part of what I think I try to push through this, is getting people to latch on to working on themselves, to understanding how important self-care is. And all part of that is, people like to push back on the self-care. But the reason it's so important, I think, Eddie, is you understand too, is you can't be as good as you could be for others if you're not the best for yourself. So if you're not willing to do that, you can't be empathetic. You're not going to be focused on that. You're going to be focused on other things. So anyways, kind of getting off again, but that was yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. There's a really cool metaphor that it's just one of these things that are very simple, but like for me was transformative. Where it's like with social media, a lot of people think of themselves as using Star Wars Luke Skywalker. Have you heard this? Like the
No, I don't
hero,
think
the
so.
hero of the show, and what this author said, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, and I feel like a monster. But maybe it'll come to me. But he says, no, you're not Luke Skywalker, you're Yoda. The audience is Luke Skywalker. You're taking the audience by the hand and you're showing them how to defeat the evil Darth Vader and destroy the Death Star. And so that little, that shift for me has been important because, I mean, absolutely ego has, I'm human. I mean, it's popped in there. And anytime I forget and I make it about me, the audience reminds me very quick. It's like, not so fast, right? Where's the value? Where's the ROI? What value are you providing to the world? So yeah, I've always thought that was helpful.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm going to remember that. So much of what for me of doing this and just staying engaged in this and just being what I do is therapy. It is what you like. The doing it and saying it and when you have a community and your community is like, I don't know about that one, and
swing and a miss,
and that's okay. And they're letting in a different way of how they'd like to digest it next time. And again, we all going to do what we want to do, but again, part of what I'm trying to do here and hopefully get better at it with talking with people like you is I want people to really understand what's happening behind the scenes and what people are going to and what people are putting things out, because there is that authenticity piece and there is that struggle with trying to stay on trends or getting caught as a creator in that trap of damn, the last few videos, man, they're kind of like, the numbers are down and you're like, one of my main goals is to work that when I do that, I completely shut off for a minute and walk and just like, until I get my head right, that doesn't matter. It's okay to kind of understand what's happening. Look, especially depending on what you're trying to do, but there is that piece that if you start focusing on that, that's when you're going to start making the content or get away from the things that are authentic. And now you're going to start trying to do things a little differently. So, I think that's a big part of it too. Do you feel that rub a little bit, that push and pull sometimes? I think, you kind of touched on it, but
you couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's something that, I'm actually really proud of the growth that I've made there, because especially early on, I mean, if, you invest into this creation and it means so much to you. And when it doesn't do well or sit well or resonate with people, it's like, oh man. But there's been an emotional detachment that's helped me where it's like, look, this meant something to you. So you created it, you released it, move on, right? And on to the next thing. And as far as the data, it's weird because it's like, you can't let the numbers define you. Otherwise, if you're always looking at the metrics, always looking at the data, the creative spark dies and your incentive dies. And so that can't be the driving force. At the same time, it's generally a good indicator of what connected with the people you want to connect with and what didn't. So to me, it's a happy medium, and again, this is not easy, to your point. Like, it's just the innate desire to want to get numbers and view, like it's there. And so I literally have coaches and over the years have just been around people that have helped me manage it. And I'm guessing you're the same way, where it's like, if there's cognitive dissonance or it doesn't feel right creatively, or you're doing it just to do it, becomes hard to pull the camera up. Like, you can't really fake that. And so how do you juggle both? How do you do what works and integrate new things so that you're trying new ideas and keeping that creative spark going? It's definitely a balance. It's a juggling act.
Again, you have to morph with that whole, what you're trying to do with that and spreading the message. And yeah. So we'll it's crazy, right? Talk a little. Why don't you just talk about a little bit about the speaking?
Yeah, there's it's funny because the speaking, the way it worked is, you're like, your digital presence becomes a resume. So, I've been hired to speak at places because of my YouTube stuff, probably before I was ready to speak at those places. So it's been learning on the go for years until I got comfortable, and just, it's almost like creating an alter ego,
Right.
because who I am, in the studio with the mic and the lights down low, and having the headphones on and speaking to music is not even close to what it's like to speak to a live audience, where your level of preparation is different, where you're interacting and you're engaging, and it's just a totally different competency. And so, like anything, it was just a matter of starting and getting feedback and asking myself, how can I be better in this world? And not assuming that because, I can speak into a mic, I can speak to an audience. They're just two different things. What I'm doing now, or what I'm looking to do now, is sort of combine the two and bring that emotive experience that takes place on my YouTube channel to a live atmosphere, which I'm not even entirely sure what that's going to look like, but I'm in the process of building that and trying to capture that. But yeah, it's been fun. It's just been a growth process,
Yeah, and because a lot of what speaking and is, again, I didn't go through and research who you've been speaking to, but I'm assuming there's a large chunk of it is in the business world, is in the
Correct.
corporate
Yeah.
world, or and things like that. And that's what I was getting to a minute ago, because what I've learned is being able to calm my mind and being able to do things that bring me peace, or put me in a state of mind so I can solve a problem, or all those things that you can take and translate. It's just this, it's a lot of the same thing. It's just in how you deliver it. I used to have, years and years ago, in sales, I had this guy. I'm going to give him a shout out. His name is Jalen A. But he was the best salesman I've ever been exposed to. But there's all these things I remember about that. And you just said something that triggered that. You talked about it's different, like when you're in your studio versus when you're out on stage. It's like a different persona and all that. One of the first things he told me, because we were traveling a lot with this specific company, and but he would tell me, he said, "Look, Scott, when I go on one of these events we're going to be doing, whatever, I have all of my stuff that's already in my suitcase, already packed, the specific clothes, everything around that. So when I leave my house and my world, my family and all that, and I pick up that suitcase and I get on that plane, I'm already a different person, because I've got different clothes. I've set everything up. I have different toothbrush. This is this life. So I go into catering to what he's, attempting to do, and who we're working with. I just thought that was very interesting. You just triggered that when you said that. I remember one of the greatest salesmen I have ever been around. He still is, because I think that relates a lot, and I think that's perfect. It's, a lot of people would construe some of that as manipulation, or trying to, you're not being real. It's not. It's like we were talking about, putting 10 guys or girls like us up in a row, and we all say the same thing in the way we say it or deliver it. They're going to pick out a couple of people, and those are the ones that are attracted to and they want to listen to, not the other 8. So that you're trying to get your message across, and that's okay. And so, anyways, that kind of brought me to that. So
there's
a
really cool book called Alter Ego that talks about, like, so even like some of the top athletes, some of the top corporate execs, they literally have an additional person in their head that they transform into, because different scenarios require a different version of you, like to your point, And so it's funny you mentioned that. There's a movie called The Greatest Showman. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I have,
Hugh
I think.
Jackman and
it's
cool.
Yeah. It's a circus thing or something.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I decided that's going to be my alter ego is, when I start stepping on stage, it's like The Greatest Showman. It just puts you in a headspace, little thing, just like, one of the breakthroughs I had recently is like going from, motivation or inspirational speaker, which is fine, but I think it boxes someone in versus I create art that changes how people feel. And you might look at that and think like, who cares what you call yourself? But in your brain, you show up differently. And I don't think that's small. I think that's a really, really big deal. And so, your friend certainly had it right.
Yeah. And that's, so I love when I talk to somebody else and they, cause I that was always an enlightening thing to me. Just those little things, that you just, they can just change just the way you think. And that just brings us back to, this whole social media thing and what we're trying to do and everything like that. And I think that's what's amazing. I continuously need to be reminded of in my community is how much that little thing you just never would have thought, or they're picking out that one piece or the reason why, or how it helped them can be from one spectrum to another. And that's what's incredible about it. And that's what I think the authenticity brings when you start crafting, putting things together and make sure the light's right and always looking and being the same affect. It's because it's curated and you're not showing any of your flaws. I don't think that's when people that doesn't get picked up on, as well. Great. So anyways, no, this is so helpful. I just want you to know, this is stuff that helps me, is talking to you and us just, chopping it up about this stuff. And I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. And I so appreciate it. Okay. So I know we're running out of time. So let's, let me try to pick out something here. Okay. So I think we haven't really touched on this, and I'm going to try to pick if there is something. It's okay if there's not. So any significant one setback in your life that was just a huge smack in the face, and if there was possibly where you're at, or reinforce or help you as you reflect back, any of those things. Have you ever had something like that?
Yeah. And it's funny, like everything that I can think of that comes to mind feels monumental at the time. And then you look back now, it's like, nah, like when, my YouTube channel started gaining traction, which, like, when you're fighting to gain traction on a platform and suddenly you are, it's a big deal. Yeah. The video, which was running in the rain, which maybe I'll probably tie into this, I think it'd be helpful, is YouTube said I used different keywords or incorrect keywords or something in the description and pulled the thing and got a strike on my channel. And so that was like a down thing. And then you sort of, you move on and, like, being let down by, I remember, like, my circle of friends that, you'd hope would support you, just weren't, just crickets. And I remember that being tough and being like, why, I'm in such a vulnerable state, sharing my thoughts, and just not getting love from the people that I assumed was hard. And even recently, like, sort of a culmination of, my assistant, taking taking from me and just a disaster, issues with production, like little things, that you just learn they're not the exception, they are the rule. And so you can't go through life expecting a lack of turbulence. And I'm not sure if that comes across cliche, but it's like one of these things where in my mind, when something happens like that, it's like, oh no, how could this be? It's like, no, this is life. And, like, what it comes down to now is do you deal with it? With my assistant, for example, a friend of mine, I'm like, do I go after him? Like, what do I, he says, Eddie, a snake bites you and goes into the woods. Do you jump into the woods after it to stomp its head, or do you go get the help you need? And I'm like, yeah, it's like you make the most of what you have. But I think most of my lessons have been like these little, so like running in the rain is a great example. This is a story where I was in Boston and I just run every morning before work. It's cold in Boston. And that morning it was like frozen, slushy, sleet stuff coming down. And, I remember going out to go on my run that day and just looking outside and having this moment of like, ew, like, I don't want to do this. And like, most importantly, like, I didn't have to do it. It's like, I could run later. I could run at the gym. I could, but I did. I went and grabbed a windbreaker and beanie and gloves, and I just went out and ran and came back and just had this like immense satisfaction because I knew I did something that like, the vast, vast, vast majority of the world would go, no, thank you. Right. And that ended up, that moment in time, I talk about it like it's just this giant epiphany, because it's been like so many times in my life, especially in difficult times, like I drop myself in that doorway and I just think like most people wouldn't. So maybe you should, like when I quit my job and I was trying to do this full time and the money was tight, like most people would go back. So maybe you shouldn't. Or speaking, the first time, just Scott, when I say terrified, man, like just hoping someone would pull a fire alarm. I'm in the back just like freaking out, right? But, you drop yourself in that doorway. It's like, just do it. Just do it. And, little things like that ended up being far more consequential to me than the adverse things where you learn to take the punches and just keep moving forward,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Love that. I mean, tying those things in and doing it over a period of time where you're showing up for yourself and running in the rain or you're pushing. Look, nobody's going to do it for us. Nobody's,
that's right. Right.
Nobody's going to push you on stage. You gotta if that's what you want to do, and you do that enough, that those things in your head or whatever's going on with you, that's the fears, that they get a little bit less. They're still there, but they're no longer going to tip the scale in the opposite direction. You've got it now to where they're just testing those demons, whatever you want to call them, that are come poking at you in that fear. They're just testing again. They know they're probably not going to get anywhere, but they're just going to keep nipping at you, right?
They're testing you. Yeah.
And when you were talking about your friends and support and things like that, one of the things I've always said, and I really push to the community around understanding something is, look, people just don't think as highly of you as you think they do. We all think that, where there's the center of people's world, and when something goes wrong, they got to come, look, who knows what they got going on, and who knows whatever. It may not be that they don't care, but they don't care like we care. So, you kind of balance that too out a little bit too. Okay. Last question. We'll kind of wrap this up here, but, and you've touched on some of these things, but future vision for your world within and looking forward, what kind of goals maybe do you want to share, and maybe even with your own personal development in the coming years around you?
Yeah, it's funny, when I talked about sort of the beginning of the journey and knowing what I didn't want, being more prevalent and arguably more important than knowing what I do, because it pushes me to sort of innovate and continuously evolve. And so I think that's the goal. I want the message and, the type of value that we, seek to provide to be bigger than social media. Like, social media is a vehicle and it's a super important one, but it's not the thing. And so how could we possibly transcend that? And that's the thing that I want to keep thinking about in a way that really makes people think and really provides perspective shifts that will help change people's lives. So whether that is more enhanced live performances or maybe more creative videos, different avenues, just constantly pushing. Yeah. One of my friends, Evan Carmichael, said to me, if you know what you want to do 5 years from now, you're thinking too small. And I loved that. I love that. I have a North Star, as I'm sure you do, and just want to continue to add value to people, but I want the vehicle to continuously evolve.
I couldn't be more grateful that you came on here, just like I said at the beginning, and in our first little interaction on TikTok, to just where things are now. And I think you're probably one of the most gracious people I've met. Talking to you, I feel I have a very strong intuition and instincts, and I feel like I can feel when somebody's not there, especially when they're talking to me. And you're a very present guy. I mean, I feel like you've given me everything that I wanted on here. And I so appreciate that, and so appreciate meeting you. And tell anybody right now, mainly what you want, your platforms exactly. I know it's your, how you want it, where they want them to go mostly. Of course, YouTube's your biggest platform, I think, but
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say likewise, it's an honor to get to hang out with you, and these conversations mean the world. So thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
And yeah, in terms of, where I can be found. So I think pretty consistently all my platforms, they're under Eddie Pinero, but the handles are Your World Within. Yeah. Which I just wanted to make that as confusing for everyone as possible, apparently. But but if you put in Eddie Pinero on Instagram or on YouTube, I'll come up. And if there's ever anything I can do to help or add value, shoot me a message, and connect as soon as I can.
Nice. That's what I love about it. Well, again, Eddie, thank you. So I think we'll cut it right there.